Hey guys, Invictor here. So I have been testing fighters for the probably like 1 or 2 weeks. So I have been just thinking about what makes the fighters good and what makes them bad, and I prepared this Excel sheet. So first of all, I want you to take a look at this. So basically, what I'm focusing on here is that when you look at this side, so there's one engine one. So this gives 15 thrusts and this costs 12. And the calculation is basically thrust divided by cost. So the calculation is 1.15. So if the calc is higher, then you get more bread for your buck, basically. So if the calc is higher, then your plane is more efficient. And in this place, I'm calculating the weapons and the defense systems and the weight, attack, defense, cost, and calculations. So basically, like this 2 times LMG, this is light machine guns. The weight is 1, attack is 4, cost is 1, and the calculation is basically attack plus defense divided by cost. I'm not taking weight into consideration, so basically what I try to do is to fill the thrust with as much weight that I can with the highest amount of calculation in the calculation tab. So I also made this, so the different chassis for the planes have different defense, weight, weapon, and like these are the slots, weapon and defense slots, and the cost values. And the advanced small is actually weapons is 3 because in the weapon slot you can't really use fighter weapons in this like the light airplanes. So, but this is basically it. Like my thinking was, I need to pick an engine, and the engine dictates the thrust, and with thrust you need to put as much weight as possible to get as much calculation as possible, because this is basically the efficiency tab. And I made the same thing for math for the heavy fighters, and this is different because the armor is actually cost different for the heavy fighter. It weighs 6 and defense is 6 and the cost is 3, so calculation is worse, but you will see that this is actually not a bad thing at all. So after I've done this, I got to the airplanes tab, and for 1936 I started making different kinds of calculations and tryouts. And what I did is, so basically I get my airplanes and put them on the Benelux region, and I have annexed Belgium with France and Netherlands from Germany, and I put the Germany's planes on Brabant and France's airplanes on Vlaanderen. So I just make them fight over the Benelux region and check the stats like this. Our fighters lost, enemy fighters lost, and both sides have nothing for the buffs, like this is formation flying, but that's it. This was a different test, I think. Anyway, so both countries have the same modifiers for the airplanes, and they have the same things for the airspace, basically. And I did the tests with 1000 planes for each side, and I gave them 100,000 planes, so they were getting resupplied as much as they could. And I bought fuel to make the fuel possible, so because if you run out of fuel, then you're in trouble. But yeah, so this was a fair test basically, with 1000 planes for France and 1000 planes for Germany. And later on, when people, I asked a lot of people about what to do with the like the tests, and people said you don't need to, like, you shouldn't use 1000 planes for each, but you should use equivalent amount of planes for the cost of the planes. Like if you use a plane that costs 81 against a plane that costs 40, so you should use 500 of the 81 cost planes against a 1000 of the planes that costs 40, basically. So the IC cost is the same. And I did the same test, but I'll show you. It's basically the same thing. So in the test, like, take a look at this one. So this is the small airframe in 1936 tech. Small airframe, 4 times LMG, like the light machine guns, and engine 1. That's it. Like this, basically this airplane. So I tested this against a faster airplane, and the cost is basically like the first one's cost is 23 and the second one is 39. And yeah, the second one lost fewer planes compared to the first one, but the IC cost is actually higher because this one costs a lot more. So yeah, agility and speed doesn't really matter when you take into consideration that the cost is a lot higher for the faster plane. So what we should do is to feel the thrust as much as possible and gain attack and defense. And agility and speed are basically non-existent in the calculations. So after that, I tried 2 times 4 LMG and engine 1, and 2 times LMG, engine 1, and 2 armor. And this costs 2 more, and you lose a lot fewer planes, and the cost is basically the same. So I said, okay, so what is the actual thing here? So small 4 LMGs, engine 1, and medium 4 LMGs, engine 1, and 3 armor. And this costs 23, and this costs 75. And this plane was more efficient, even though it costs a lot more, because like the armor actually makes the work here. And later on I said, okay, I need to note down attack, defense, agility, and speed of the planes so that I can see what the hell is happening. So I started looking at these, and I'm not gonna bore you with all the details, and I'm gonna just jump ahead. So after a while I came into conclusion at this point, and at this point, that the medium planes are better in 1936, because in this plane, like the medium ones, so 4 times light machine guns and twice cannon ones, 2 engine 4s, self whatever tanks, what was it called? Self-sealing fuel tanks, 2 times light machine gun defense turrets, and 2 armors. This medium plane against small airframe, 4 LMGs, 1 engine 2, and SSFT and drop tanks because of the range. And I calculated like this plane is cost 87 per plane, and this is 28, and this plane lost 108 and this lost 520, and the IC cost is actually very significant. Like the first plane is very much more efficient than the second one. And then I tried this. So this is basically, I dropped the drop tanks and put armor instead, and this was a bit more closer. And I also calculated this under the same IC cost test rules, which is if you have a less costing plane, you will have more planes than the other plane. So I basically gave like 300 planes for this and 700 for this one, and even then the medium plane was actually more cost efficient compared to the small one, because basically the problem is with the basic small airframe, you get 2 weapons and 2 defenses, and that's like too few to actually matter, you know. Like this is a weak plane because you don't have the third slot for the defense or the offense. So yeah, so basically in 1936, medium chassis airplanes are much better, and it gets better the closer you get attack and defense. So like I calculated this also, like the 2 mediums, but this one has 50 attack and 38 defense, and this one has 32 attack and 44 defense, and this one was a lot better actually when you compare to it. So when you make a calculation like the attack multiplied by defense, and the same thing for the bottom one, so that's basically it. Like when you multiply attack and defense, the highest value is usually the better plane. So because like more attack means you will be downing their planes more, and more defense means you will get less downed by the enemy. So when you multiply them, the higher the number, the better your plane is. So, and when you get to 1938, basically what changes is that you get this tech, which gives heavy machine guns. So in 1938, I did a lot of tests again, and I'm not gonna bore you with the details. Basically, mediums are still superior because with the same one, you just put heavy machine guns instead of the light machine guns, and it's still performing better than the small ones. But it's closer because in the small ones, you can now put heavy machine guns instead, and it's better than the 1936 variant. But in 1940s, there's a big difference, because in the 1936 airframe you get 2 offense and 2 defense slots, but in the 1940 you get 3 offense and 3 defense slots, and the plane chassis is much better. So I did a lot of tests here again, and I came into conclusion that, like, I did a lot of tests, but the best small airplane against the best medium airplane that I could make, like 48 attack and 52 defense, the small airframe was actually better, like more cost efficient, like 20,000 to 23,000. And then I tried the smaller ones against each other, and yeah, so if you put more attack, and like this one was 4 heavy machine guns, what most people use from the from what I talk with other people, like people just put heavy machine guns in the attack, 1 engine 3, SSFT, armor and drop tanks because of the range, and then just use it like that. But if you just put cannons instead of heavy machine guns and use the same plane, it's actually more cost efficient. So you should do this instead. So yeah, that's the basically the 1940. And in the medium ones, I used four times heavy machine guns, 2 engine 3s, and SSFT, and 4 armors. So that's basically a full airplane. So like you could exchange the 2 engine 3s for 2 engine 4s and use heavier weapons, but it's not going to change a lot because you already have great balance between attack and defense, and like what you end up using is like a lot more costs, so you actually get a lot more losses. But if you really want to use heavy fighters, you can still use this, because when you compare the costs, it's actually very close. So yeah, mediums are close to small ones in 1940 chassis, but yeah, small ones are actually better. And when you get to 1942, what changes is that in 1942 you basically get this, which is Cannon 2. And there's not a lot of change, so I tried a medium airplane with Cannon 2s against the small one, but small one is a lot more better here, because like it's the same thing, but basically better. So it doesn't really work. So this plane and this plane is really good. Like if you're fighting in Europe, you can use 2 armors instead of armor and drop tanks, but otherwise you should use armor and drop tanks for the range. And in 1944 you get the small airframe and the engine 4. So I did just one test. So this is small, two Cannon 2s and 4 heavy machine guns, and the engine 4, 1 engine 4 for your engine, and SSFT and 2 armors, because you get 3 attacks, 3 offense slots and 3 defense slots. And this plane was much better than the medium one that I was trying to use, and this is the same IC cost test again. So yeah, I was basically using the twice the amount of airplanes for the small one, but this doesn't really change anything. Like I made a lot of calculations, and this makes like a 6% change or something. Like testing 200 against 400 is 6% different than testing 1000 against 1000. So, and it's really surprised me. I would expect different results, but I don't know what's going on between the basically the calculations for Hearts of Iron, but yeah. So in 1944 chassis, small ones are still better than the medium ones. You need to take into consideration that some countries have bonuses to small fighters or heavy fighters, and there are a lot of texts that change those. And also, the small ones have shorter range, and they require more fuel because you end up with more planes to counter the fewer heavy planes, and you need more airports to hold them in. So you need to consider those, but when you consider them, and if you're basically fighting in like developed places like Europe or Middle East, maybe even Africa, small ones, small airframes are actually better than the heavy fighters. The small fighters are better. But if you're fighting in like China or South America, maybe heavy fighters are better because of the range. But for cost efficiency, until you get to 1940, the medium ones are better. But from 1940 and onwards, the small chassis is definitely better. And after that, I did some tests for the radars, and radars only matter if you have one radar in the range, apparently. So if you get a radar, you get more. What is it called again? Air detection. Yeah, radars in range. If you build a radar, you get 50% for the air detection. And I did more tests for the doctrines, and like the result is actually operational is better for fighters, and operational is operational integrity, this one, and that's because you get ace generation chance, which was not calculated in this calculations. It was basically random, but you get ground support, which is good for the CAS, but you get fighter detection, which is a lot, and then air superiority, which is really good. And then you have like agility, but I don't know if this matters a lot. And there was something else like air support, mission efficiency. I don't know how much those matter, but ace generation chance again, air superiority, mission efficiency again. These are really good bonuses. So back then we were getting like this one for air superiority and CAS agility, and this one for fighter agility. But in my calculations, like I have a ton of data that says agility doesn't really matter here, because like this plane has 71 agility and this one is 23, and yeah, attack and defense are still superior to like any kind of agility basically. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to get more agility, of course, but it's not the most important thing. Like it's the third maybe important thing, maybe even fourth if you like consider attack, defense, cost, and then maybe agility. So yeah, in short, 1936 medium chassis or heavy fighters are better. 1938 they get closer, but the heavy fighters, the medium chassis is still better. But 1940 and onwards, smaller chassis, the lighter planes are better, and it keeps getting better and better for 1942, 1944, whatever. So that's basically it. And for the doctrines, operational integrity is better for fighters. And if you get the green air, not only it's just the thing that makes you win the fights, but any kind of cast is gonna work in the green air compared to any other kind of cast. So I think this, like the doctrine type, should be chosen for the fighters, and if you win the air, your cast is gonna win anyway. So I think, yeah, operation is better for the general gist basically. And for the spirits, I tested some things, but I found that centralized control is the thing that matters the most. So get this, and you don't need to get any other thing basically. That's it for today, and thank you for watching the video. And if you want to tell me where I'm wrong, if I'm wrong, please tell me so in the comments, and I will make a new video just for you, telling that I was wrong and you were right. Thank you for watching.